the experiences basically just continue on and on and on like that. And when I first met my wife, thankfully she's very understanding, and she was very much into this because her grandmother was Dolores Cannon, so she was around it her whole life, so she understands. Every time I just want to start talking about something, I can just start talking about it instead of saying, honey, something weird happened, I got to explain. We don't have to, we can just talk. And so I told her that often things, might happen, just don't be freaked out. And she said, speaking of that, I forgot to tell you. I said, what is it? Well, she said, well, and this was obviously, I'm skipping many years forward, we love each other, but we can't exactly sleep together. So we put 2 queen-size beds together that are wall to wall, and we just basically have our both sides, and we could just sprawl out and sleep. And she said, well, last night, I got up and I looked over, and your bed, and mind you, there's no more space. Your bed was about 10 feet from mine, and there were 4 grays standing around you. Each one had this rod going into one of your ankles and your wrists. And I said, okay. And I said, what happened? She said, one of them turned around and saw me, and they scurried out the room. And so I said, what did you do? She said, I just went back to bed. I'm like, okay. So as she's telling me this, I again get these feelings, as I often get, and it was just to convey, it was her mind understood that interaction as control, but it was actually guiding. It was supposed to symbolize that they're here to guide me. And so I just had to convey this to her so she doesn't think something is happening to me and that she can't help and start feeling helpless. So anyway, and so it happens a lot. I mean, not too long ago, it was actually over a year ago, my wife and my son were coming home, and where we lived, they were kind of pulling into a driveway. And so I was sitting at home, and they walked in, and my son, we try not to talk to him about aliens, all these other things, and part of my French, I always tell him, learn how to wipe your ass first, then worry about aliens. And so I usually don't like to talk to him about this stuff. Grow up first, have a childhood, and everything else will come at the right time. And so he walked in, he's like, we saw ufohub, you saw ufohub. I was like, you mean UFOs? He's like, yeah, we saw it. I look over at my wife, and she's like, it was just an airplane. And I said, okay. And he's getting so frustrated, and they both saw it. They both saw it. But he was getting frustrated. It's like, you guys believe in this stuff, and you don't believe me. I said, Jaden, just go take a shower, brush your teeth, and go to bed. And so, anyway, we didn't talk about this again. So not too long ago, I asked my wife, I said, look, we never talked about this experience that you and Jaden had. Can you please tell me again? And she said, well, it's an airplane that just flew over. I said, well, I mean, how high was it? She's like, oh, it was right above the tree lines. And I was like, how big was it? It was like an airplane. And I'm just looking at her, just waiting for her brain to click. And she did. She's like, oh, now that I think about it, it actually wasn't an airplane at all. It was a triangle. And I said, and she, but this, even now, it's like, I want to keep saying, airplane, but visually I'm seeing a triangle. I said, well, you would think that above the tree lines, flying real slow would be an obvious that it was not an airplane, because she's been in airplanes, I've been in airplanes, it would probably blown out every window in the house. And so, anyway, those are some of the things that generally happen when you kind of having these experiences. Paranormal things start happening. Things start appearing or disappearing. I would be kind of looking over, and I would see a shape that would be in another room, especially where I lived in Robertsville. It would just kind of pull back. So I would go into the room, and it was simply one room with 5-inch pattern bars of steel there. There was no way to get out, but there was nothing there. So a lot of times, you open your mind up to perceiving these different levels. The point is not to be afraid. Simply let it come to you as it comes, and whatever you need to do and understand will eventually come to you. Try not to get the frustration, get the better of you, and start kind of hindering the process, because once you start getting frustrated and angry, now you're on a different level vibrationally, and you're not allowing the things that can come to you. And so basically, I just been, because of that, still experiencing all that I can. And a lot of times I just would interview certain people that because I personally don't necessarily like to speak. I didn't want to speak. When I first was given the idea of UFO Hub, I loved it because part of that download showed me that the same way that I went to the library and picked up a book, willingly went to pick up a book and read this article and followed this person, in that way I can set up video versions of that online for everyone else to go and watch it or don't, but at least I'm not feeling like I'm pushing it on anybody. And so a lot of times then I would just do these different interviews to where a certain person will talk about certain things that I know are true, and so I would just interview them and then leave it out there. So I don't have to speak, they did the speaking for me, and now it's up there to watch for free. And so that's sort of my story, and what I do and why I do it.